All right, good evening. Welcome to the Easthampton City Council meeting for Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. The meeting tonight is being recorded and broadcast live via Easthampton Media on Charter Channel 193 and live streamed on Easthampton Media's YouTube channel. Our thanks as always to Easthampton Media for the great work they do in bringing these meetings to all of you. All counselors and participants are gathered remotely. Remote meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic are the result of an executive order by Governor Baker on March 12th, allowing us to do so. I remind both the members of the City Council and of the public to remain on mute until recognized by the chair. Before we begin our business tonight, I will ask the City Clerk, Barbara, to swear in our new counselor, Erica Flood. Erica, if you want to go off mute. All right, go ahead.
Raise your right hand. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Erica Flood, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent upon me as City Councilor at large, according to the best of my knowledge and abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Constitution of the United States of America,
of the Constitution of the United States of America,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and the City of Easthampton.
and the City of Easthampton.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Erica. Councilor Flood. Right, Barbara, this meeting is now called to order. Would you please take the roll call?
Peg Coniff,
Here.
Salem Derby,
Present.
Erica Flood,
Present.
Omar Gomez,
Here.
JP Kaczynski. Okay, Tom Peak, Dan Rist,
Here.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Here.
and Owen Zarrett.
Here.
And you did get JP, right, Barbara? He's here.
Oh, but I'll check him off.
Okay.
And Tom
Tom's here too.
Okay, and Tom's, okay, got you all.
Okay. All right, let's stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
and to the
To the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
Under God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with liberty and
justice
justice
for all.
Okay, we have no minutes to approve. So at this time, if there is anyone here for the public speak portion of the meeting, if you are here to speak about anything that will not be on the public hearings, you are more than welcome to raise your hand virtually using the participants option at the bottom of your screen, then click raise hand. We will, as always, not be responding to anything, but you are certainly free to make any comments at this time. Do we have anybody here for public speak? All right, not seeing any. We have a few public hearings at 6:15, but we have some time between now and then. So are there any communications from elected officials, boards, and committees before we begin with public hearings? Councilor Zarrett.
Just first of all, a quick welcome to our newest Councilor Flood. Welcome. I just wanted to again applaud everybody for their participation in the process last week of an unprecedented appointment to the City Council, something we've never done before. And I know there's some old timers here, and when I say old timers, I just mean how long you've been in the council. I'm not speaking to your age, who have certainly seen a lot. Thank you, President Coniff, for navigating us through that, and Councilor Peak for your ongoing advocacy for ranked choice voting, which brought us to that. I was really pleased to see 5 exceptional candidates who were nominated, and thank you to all the councilors who did their due diligence to research the qualifications and make those nominations. Outside of that, this is a tiring time for, I think, a lot of us, having kind of navigated our way through and election season, and it's a tiring time for our nation, which right now feels really divided. So I'm just welcoming any opportunities to find ways to come together with commonalities outside of politics and find ways to celebrate each other. I did want to give some recognition to my colleague, Tom Peake, for all the work he did with question 2. I know it didn't pass, but I'm just so impressed by your ongoing dedication in so many fields, but certainly to this one topic. And while it wasn't successful last night, I have good hope for the future, and certainly we're going to see success for it here in Easthampton. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaret. Any other comments? Councilor Peake.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I, as well as President Conniff and Councilors Zaret and Gomez and Rothschild, attended a open house and presentation type event that the fire department hosted late last week. And I just thought that it was a really and Councilor Kwasinski was there remotely as well. Don't want to leave anyone out. It was just a really interesting presentation. I learned a lot about the equipment that they use, and I think it helped to contextualize a little bit about some of the budget requests that we get. It made me really think that I would invite all the department heads to do a similar thing, to give opportunities to just give the council, a chance to see what you're doing, and to help us see your perspective when it comes to what are the challenges that you face, what are the costs that you incur, and things like that, because it really does make our fiscal oversight duty easier when we can get some context into what all this is and why it works the way that it does. So very happy for the fire department for hosting us, and I just really challenge the rest of the city, subject to your schedules and workloads, to do the same thing and invite us over to see what you do and help us understand your job. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor Peake. Councilor Kwasinski.
Just very briefly to follow up on Councilor Peake's invitation, I certainly would look forward to meeting with all the departments. I'm sure the other councilors would also. The presentation by the fire department and the new chief, Norris, I thought was particularly very, very good. We were there, I believe, for about 3 hours, and he covered all the bases along with the members of the department. So kudos to the department.
Anyone else? All right, moving on to correspondence, announcements, President, Vice President, Communications. So first, also, Tom Peake, thank you to the fire department. It was very thorough, very complete. Appreciate it from Chief Norris. Also want to welcome Erica Flood to the council. Great addition. We're looking forward to a lot of great input and debate from you on some of our topics. So thank you for participating and welcome. I also want to do a shout out, and I'm surprised, Councilor Kwasinski, you didn't say anything. Yesterday during the election, the CPA exemption passed in Easthampton for low income individuals and low and middle income senior homeowners for the CPA exemption. So thank you to Easthampton. Certainly it's not a big dollar amount, but we on the council are looking for any tool we can find that will bring relief from a tax perspective to the citizens of Easthampton. And that was just a small step. And I thank the voters for passing that yesterday. Also, now I would like to, with the joining of Councilor Flood, we are going to just change up a couple of committees, and I wanted to announce those changes tonight. They're pretty minor, but I wanted to get them on the record. So the Finance Committee, former Councilor Bill Lynch was on the Finance Committee, so we needed to fill that position. We're going to fill that vacancy with Councilor Gomez on the Finance Committee. On the appointment committee, that leaves actually 2 vacancies now. Councillor Gomez is moving off of appointments into finance, and former Councillor Lynch was on that committee. So we're going to have Lindsay Rothschild joining the appointment committee, and Councillor Flood also joining the appointment committee. I also want to remind the appointment committee that on your next meeting, you will have to name a chair, as the chair is no longer there, and you will also need to name a clerk because the clerk is no longer there. So if you could do that on your next official meeting, that would be great. And then the only other change we have is with Councillor Rothschild moving over to appointments, property has a vacancy, and that will be filled by Councillor Flood. Any questions on those assignments? Okay. All right. Councillor Riss, did you have anything, any comments to make? You're on mute. You're on
Not tonight.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes, Mayor, if you have anything to add for Mayor Communications.
I would just like to thank our city clerk and assistant city clerk and all of the volunteers who just made yesterday run so smoothly, especially in a new polling location where all the precincts were together. Just really a great job. It was very clear and clean. And I know in the beginning, they had to shift once things got running and did so. Heard nothing but wonderful things from voters and residents who checked in on it. Also heard great things about how quickly, efficiently we processed our vote by mail ballots. So a huge thank you to everyone who participated. And, Barbara can confirm, but I'm thinking we ended up over 80% voter participation. So population of 16,000, voters around 12,000, and 80% of us. And again, I'm not sure if we beat last presidential's total, but not to mention early voting, really just all around city effort. And I'm just so proud to be chosen by our voters to be mayor. So thank you, everyone. And I must say it's a real comfort to be in a mayor role and know all the good work that we have done together and what we will do together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kwasinski, I was going to say, does anybody have any questions for the mayor? But apparently Councillor Kwasinski.
I just had some kudos for the mayor and for our clerk. Barbara and Nicole, I thank you so much for doing all the work you did to pull off the election, Barb, and for getting the signage out early and on the Rotary to announce the voting locations, and for the placement of the large sign at the top of Whitebrook. That really helped with regard to anyone who might have questions regarding where to vote for precincts 1, 2, and 5. Thank you. Good job.
Councillor Rist?
I should also have said that I went over there to see a very smooth operation. I want to remind the mayor that we may have to continue to have the high school, and that might need some pre-planning for next year's school schedule, because I think it worked well and I just don't anticipate Whitebrook. Mountain View School, which I heard was one of the names out there, would be done. So just a heads up on that, but it worked really well and I was happy to help. Great job. Barb, you do a great job all the time.
She does, Barbara.
You cannot retire, not for 100 years.
Good job. I just want to make a quick comment. Oh, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
I was asked by a couple of councilors about Ferry Street, and one, we're running behind because of all of the rain and the weather, but we're hoping to wrap up and reopen Ferry Street by November 13th right now. So we're getting updates. Greg Nuttleman, Director of Public Works, has been back and forth with the contractors, just doing whatever we can to get that road open. So with a week of rain, we got pushed back a week. So by the 13th. And that's all I have to share.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment to some folks that have been coming in late. You may have noticed that I've turned off your camera, and that is just because it's very hard to manage a lot of moving faces. So when it comes time, and if you choose to make a public comment, I will certainly, you can take your camera and put it back on, but it's just for ease of running the meeting at this point. It is now 6:15, and I will take a motion to open the public hearings.
So moved.
So, second.
Second.
Motion is second to open the public hearings. Any discussion? All right, public hearings are now open. We have 4 tonight. We'll start with supplemental
Point of
appropriation.
order.
Vote on that.
We need to vote.
Oh, sorry, guys. A little tired. All right. Do we really need to vote? Yeah, go ahead.
Peg Coniff,
Yes.
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Yes.
Public hearing is now open, and that will not be the last time tonight that that happens. So thank you. Councilor Rist?
Yes, we have a very simple appropriation in front of us tonight, $722,752.98. This was the cannabis impact fee that was given to the city by INSA. It arrived before the stabilization fund was established. Once the stabilization fund was established, all future impact fees can go directly into it, which has already happened. But because it was not approved at the time this arrived, this this impact fee was put in free cash. So it must be moved to impact stabilization because it cannot be used for anything other than those items allowed for by law for cannabis impact. It was approved 2-0. I don't know if Val has anything to say, but this is rather perfunctory. We just have to do this to move it over. Just so you know, there was over $3 million in free cash, and this was a big part of it. So that once this moves, there'll be a little over $2 million in free cash, which I'm sure the mayor will have some appropriations coming our way. I have nothing else. I don't know if Val wants to say anything. Again, this is fairly simple.
Val, do you have anything to add?
No, we're all set.
Okay. All right, Councilor Rist. Any questions from anyone else?
Any questions from the public?
Seeing none.
Okay, I move that the city council approve a supplemental appropriation for the following appropriation of $722,752.98 to be transferred from free cash, $722,752.98 to be transferred to the Cannabis Impact Stabilization Fund, $722,572. I'm sorry, that's a typo, $722,752.98. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to move received cannabis impact fees in FY20 to the Cannabis Impact Stabilization Fund.
Second.
Motion is second on the appropriation to the Cannabis Impact Stabilization Fund. Any further discussion?
I have to ask Barbara, this is just a point of legality. Was this advertised without this mistake right here? That the 722,572.98 was there under? I hope it was, because otherwise we have to do this. We have to hold this.
It was advertised as, yep, it was advertised correctly, 722.
I apologize for not catching that, but I guess it's not a problem if we advertise it correctly. Madam President, we can vote.
All right, if there's no further discussion, Barbara?
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zaret,
Aye.
Peg Coniff.
Aye. Okay. Next one is fuel storage license application. I believe this is you, Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to start saying that we vote 3-0 to approve it at the subcommittee. Basically, this is a new license, fuel storage license for 7,000 gallons for the LP gas for the new school. Basically, that tank is to provide heater for the building while they're doing the construction for the new school. And because the capacity of the tank, they need the license. I think Dan, the fire prevention officer, I'm pretty sure is here with us tonight in case someone else have any question. But it's basically, it's really simple. It's basically to provide a heater for the new building.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Any questions from the public?
Madam President, if Dan, I know Dan Constantine is here, the fire prevention. I don't know if we want to add something to the.
Sure, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, councilors. Yeah, so this just in a nutshell, the fire code specifies anything on a piece of land over 2,000 gallons has to have a land license, even though it's temporary. I know this is going to be for temporary heat, mainly for this year, this winter time. They currently have, they're going to have a total of 4,000 gallons right now, basically feeding 2 different heaters for the building. So that will be for this winter. And there may be a time before they cut over to the natural gas service from Whitebrook that they have to feed the new boilers also with the propane. So I'll be working closely with them to ensure that everything's done by the fire code. So we had to go to the land license. I did check with the marshal's office, but even though it was temporary, we still had to go with the land license. So it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much for the temporary heat.
Okay, Councilor Rist.
Hey, Dan, I assume that this still has the containment necessary for such a tank. I mean, it is a construction site. I know I've seen that they have to be contained maybe in a fenced-in area. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. So the code is very stringent, and what they have to do, what I'm having them do is they're going to be contained in basically Jersey barriers. So everything has to be protected from vehicular traffic. I'm having all the piping is going to be regular piping. It's going to be marked. They have to do, everything has to be well protected, the piping, everything. They have to have carbon monoxide protection inside the building on every level. I'll be inspecting that periodically to make sure, they're doing that properly too, throughout the construction. I've been back and forth with Mike, who's the super there, who's been great to work with, and stuff. And I'm currently working with AmeriGas to ensure that everything on site is right to the fire code and safety for all those folks there.
Just to follow up, you're doing inspections just to make everybody feel safe, as if it was brand new. I mean, even though it's temporary, the piping and everything is inspected at installation, and all of this is done. I know. I don't recall this ever happening before. Maybe it's new for big construction sites to have propane. But I just know that in the heat of construction, I'd be concerned that they try to cut corners, and you're not going to let them do that, correct?
No, I'm not going to let them do that. I've been back and forth with AmeriGas this week with some things, and I've been pretty strict with them on what I want, and I'm holding them right to the letter of the code because these heaters are so big that they draw liquid. So it's going to be liquid propane that's going to be feeding these heaters. So I've talked with the rep from the company for the heaters themselves. I've consulted with our gas inspector. And I've also consulted with other folks in the propane industry that I have personal contact with to make sure everything is right to it. I've spent probably about 10 hours on this week, just on this project alone, ensuring that everything is going to be safe and stuff. It's also going to have protection. So if for some reason, the pipe were to get disrupted and stuff, and product were to come out, then the flow of gas will shut down or slow down very, very quickly and stuff. So I'm going to make sure that everything is done to the letter of the code, so everybody is safe.
Thank you. I just wanted to assure the public that even though this is temporary, it's safe because it's a big deal. Thank you.
It is, and there's specifics in the fire code that deal right with temporary heating, because in the past years, not so much in our town, but there's been issues. So yeah, I want to ensure everybody that it will be installed properly and safely.
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the council and from the public? Being none, Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I want to make a motion to approve the fuel storage license of 7,000 gallons of LP gas at 200 Park Street for the new school.
Second.
Motion is second for the propane tanks at 200 Park. Any further discussion? Robert?
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Homer Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Yes.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zaret,
Yes.
Peg Coniff,
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up on the public hearing is zoning ordinance amendment for cannabis cultivation. Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Madam President. So tonight, what I'd like to do is I'd like to call on City Planner Jeff Bagg and I'm hoping that maybe you can make him a co-host so he can share his screen. What I'd like to do is just show the other councilors as an update some of the language that we've been looking at, and just kind of go over that a little bit. Then once he's done talking about what the planning board has come up with, I'll jump back in and I'll let people know what we've been talking about. So I'll turn it over to Jeff Bagg.
Okay. Jeff, I've made you co-host if you'd like to share your screen.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'd also like to make a comment to the councilors. I'm not going to be able to see you waving your arms frantically if you have any questions. So please use the raise your hand feature. That would really help me out a lot. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And this is a continued public hearing that started, I believe, on October 7th. I think was the day that we started this. And I appreciate this. I just want to spend a few minutes to go over the report that was prepared by the planning board, in which kind of starts this discussion. During the last public hearing, it was identified that there would potentially be some amendments. And I think it's just an opportunity to go back to make sure everyone starts on the same page. And then if we change the page and make amendments, at least we were all in the same, working off the same document. This is the materials that were transmitted to City Council. This information is available on the city's website under City Council, and there's a tab for zoning amendments. And this is the only document there right now. So the final language that was reported to City Council from Planning Board is here, and it's highlighted in red. And it starts off in this middle paragraph in the highway business, that's in black, and then in the red is the new language. Any cannabis establishment shall be permitted, provided that the cannabis establishment is located in an existing building, or if one is to be located in a new building, it shall comply with all of the planned business development requirements under section 8.1, except that cultivation and manufacturing uses must be accompanied by a retail establishment. Cultivation and manufacturing uses must be on a property of a minimum of 5 acres in size. Cultivation manufacturing buildings must be at least 75 feet from Route 10, and no single cultivation manufacturing building shall be larger than 25,000 square feet. And then it continues on with the rest of the language that exists in the ordinance currently. The planning board and ordinance held joint public hearings in June, July, and August. And in this report, you can access the videos from June 23rd, July 14th, July 28th, and August 18th. And part of where this started from was when the city was creating its adult use cannabis regulations in 2018 in February and March. this topic of cultivation in the highway business was essentially punted. There was identified that there could be potentially new buildings, large buildings that could be erected without really having the time to create design standards or consider what it would look like or how it would interact with the highway business. And so the decision was kind of made at that time as a safeguard to say that cultivation could be allowed in an existing building in the highway business district, because within an existing building, it was determined that it wouldn't change the character of the existing highway business neighborhood, and it could go into that building if it existed. And I think during that time, it was identified that this would be something that would come back and be circled back to, and that's really what we've done over the past several months. The proposed amendment creates some provisions which are intended to dictate some of the general time, place, and manner characteristics of a new building. One of the things that was really determined to be helpful was requiring these new buildings to comply with the planned business development district, which has standards for landscaping and setbacks and other things. And so that was one of the key things that we were trying to do, is if you were going to build a new building, making sure that there are some design criteria. We over the course of the hearings, there were quite a few topics that were covered, including the size of individual buildings, proximity to Route 10, proximity of new buildings to residential properties nearby, the idea of including cannabis retail with the cannabis cultivation use, the general character of Route 10 was discussed, and incorporating regulations that apply to the other businesses was sort of an important factor. A few concerns were identified and discussed, but not all were resolved. One of the most important things that we discussed was a building size cap, and for single retail uses in the highway business, if you think like a Walmart or that kind of facility, there is an existing cap of 50,000 square feet already in existence for the single retailer. And so the discussion started with maybe 50,000 square feet was the right size for a cultivation facility. But after doing research and evaluating some of the existing buildings in the area, the size was brought down to 25,000 square feet. There were some concerns about the process raised throughout these public hearings. The most significant one was notification to abutters. And what we looked at was the requirements of Chapter 40A do not require notification to property owners. And I think we discussed this quite a bit, and it's understood that it's unfortunate, but it was we achieved the requirements for notification. And it did lead to some discussions about potentially changing requirements in the future. But as far as this process was concerned, we met the requirements for notification. And I will not go over each and every page of this document, but I do want to just capture that. I'm going to scroll for a moment here. One of the main tasks at hand was to evaluate the entire highway business district to ensure that we understood what it would look like if cultivation buildings were built in the highway business. So there were certain evaluations done for properties 3 acres and greater in size. So there's a series of slides here which show parcels in the highway business district, showing that there are numerous properties over 3 acres in size. And then one of the other discussions was how close should a new building be allowed to be built to Route 10. And so some of the discussions began around about 100 feet would be an appropriate setback for a new building. And so these maps show that within 100 feet, we have a pattern of development that would allow a small retail building, for example, to be built within 100 feet, and then the cultivation building would be set back. Through the deliberations, that setback was reduced to 75 feet. And that was determined to be at least a good starting point for having a separation from Route 10 for a new cultivation facility. And then we highlighted the planned business development requirements here. This is 8.1. And so there was a discussion and a review of what those regulations would do and how they would work as a way to give some protection and some guidance for what the buildings would look like and where they would be located. And then as I think I wrap up here, we did some evaluation of building sizes. A few, cultivation facilities throughout Massachusetts were identified. And so we have some examples. This one's in Bellingham of a 50,000 square foot building, on a maybe a 4-acre property. And we did some evaluations of what these buildings are looking like. 21,000 square foot building on a 21,000 square foot site. This one is an approved facility in Northampton, which shows a 145,000 square foot cultivation facility, happens to be on 100 acres. And then what we started to look at is we've been active in cannabis for some time, so we actually have some examples. This was relative to building size. So this is on Wilmelco Way. This is a 16,000 square foot building. This is 195 Northampton Street, the former Cook Building Supply. And although that front building has been demolished, the back building and the smaller area with the red roof is about 15,000 square feet. On O'Neill Street, the building that's close to completion is a 50,000 square foot addition. And so some of these were intended to show and help us understand what some of these sizes meant, especially the 50,000 square feet and going down to 25,000 square feet. This is the back of the building on O'Neill Street. That's 50,000 square feet. This is a site plan from the Stop and Shop, which is a property of interest. There were questions about whether the amendment was for a project here or because of the project. And this image here on the bottom shows what one of the cannabis companies has shown during their community outreach meeting for the Stop and Shop parcel, which shows a single 22,000 square foot building here. And then finally, to orient us all to size, is the new River Valley Co-op building that's under construction is 23,000 square feet. So through these discussions, that's how we went from 50,000 square feet as being determined to be too large down to 25,000 square feet. So I think what I wanted to do that for is just to get us all on the same page in terms of the amendment as it exists currently. And then I think it would potentially make sense for Councilor Derby to review some of the discussions that have happened since then and some of the potential changes that should be discussed now as part of the rest of the process here.
Thank you, Planner Bag. That was really thorough. And we were hoping to be able to come to this meeting tonight to be prepared, but we did have one of our meetings was canceled because of the power outage, so we had to shuffle. And it was brought to my attention. We met on Monday, and it was brought to my attention that the posting, which had been up for 72 hours, included a weekend. So, there was a little bit of concern that might not meet the requirements for posting. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that everybody understands, first of all, that no votes were taken, and it was just discussion on the subject that we were talking about. And I'd like to review what we talked about, so everybody can know exactly what was said, and they can also watch the video as well. So we identified, because this is a complex issue and we have multiple factors in play, this is not a straightforward zoning amendment, because there are one of the things that Planner Bag did not mention is there is another cannabis operation that's looking to go in across the street, which we found out, at least I found out about more than halfway through this process. So that kind of changes the dynamic of it. So what we've been trying to do is identify what are the issues, what are the potential issues, what are the impacts, what are the benefits. And so at our meeting on Monday, we discussed 3 specific things that we wanted to, look at as far as potential amendments that go above and beyond what the planning board has recommended. And so one of those things is it's come to our attention through this process that, having a, any sort of project that abuts a residential zone, there could be potential impact to neighbors. And, and if you remember my questions to candidates, that's something that is something I feel that is important. And so at the meeting on Monday, we discussed potential 150-foot buffer between a residential zone and any cannabis growing facility. So that would be, if they were going to put a growing facility on the border of a residential neighborhood, it would have to be at least 150 feet away from the property line. And then, another thing we talked about in addition to that is because it would be part of a planned business development, there would also have to be significant shrubbery and visual impact done on lighting and how it would affect the adjacent neighborhoods. So that's one of the things that we talked about as an amendment to this particular zoning issue. The other thing that we talked about at some great length was whether an existing cannabis grow facility would be able to expand. And how would that look as we went forward with this? Would they be able to build a new 25,000 square foot in addition to, their already completed reused grow space, or would they be able to build, out so they would have 25,000 square feet capacity total? And so that was a discussion that we had, and that is a potential amendment that would be coming forward along with this as we move forward. And then finally, the third thing that we discussed, and I'm drawing a little bit of a blank here, but Tom, can you just remind me real quick, because you brought it up, and I just wanted to, this is blank. I'm blanking right now.
The buffers thing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes. So the third thing, because I already thought I had done the buffer, but yeah. So the third thing we talked about was we do have a 200-foot buffer between retail cannabis facilities. And so we were discussing, in highway business, does that make sense, especially if you have them, separated and, they're not right on top of each other like they potentially would be in downtown business. So that was the third topic that we really kind of delved into. And I also one of the other things that I wanted to say about that meeting on Monday was that we also allowed people from the public to speak before we kind of discussed these 3 things. I also introduced to the other counselors that we received a letter from Brenda Salyer from the planning board, which I'll email out to all the other counselors before our next public hearing. But that basically sums up the meeting that we had on Monday. And I would just ask that Owen and Tom, would you just verify that that's what the gist of what we talked about? Okay, great. Yeah. Now I do want to, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Well, if you're done, I just have a couple questions.
Absolutely.
Oh boy. I'm sorry. So I assume, since you're still working on these amendments, we're going to continue this public hearing.
That is correct.
Now, these amendments are rather important. 150-foot buffer, changing or deleting the 250-foot buffer between retail establishments. These amendments were not discussed by the planning board. Do they get to weigh in on this? How does that process normally? Do you have to send it back to them if you make these 3 amendments?
No, so all these things were discussed with the planning board. They just didn't take any action in their written recommendation on those 3 topics. I don't believe that we would have to go back to them in order to do this, but I would defer to the city planner. I believe that we have the capability of creating our amendments and bringing those forward to the full council.
I believe you do too. Obviously, we'll just ask the planning board to weigh in when we have finalized the public hearing.
Yeah.
Last question is, I don't think we have to, Barbara, but do we have to re-advertise this if they make these amendments? There's 3 large changes in.
I'm not sure on that. I think if it changed the whole, if it made major changes to it, then maybe, but I am not sure about that.
My guess is no, because we could do that on the night of a meeting. We can change a number if we wanted to. If someone made an amendment. So I don't believe you have to re-advertise, but I thought I'd ask. I'm done. Thank you.
Had a question potentially.
Yeah, so go ahead, Councilor Peak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if for most of us who were here last time we did this, when we initially wrote the cannabis ordinance, I think that we'll remember that there were a number of amendments brought by councilors at the day of the public hearing that were voted on, debated, and voted on either up or down at that hearing without any planning board discussion. So whether or not it would be a good idea to consult the planning board is a different thing, but I do feel pretty strongly that it's within our authority to amend these sorts of things on the spot, and we've done so on multiple occasions.
Great. Councilor Bagg, and then Councilor, sorry, City Planner Bagg, and then Councilor Zarek. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. I was gonna echo what Tom was saying, is especially these residential setbacks, adding the 150 feet, I think it's certainly within the scope of addressing questions or concerns about this topic, which is cultivation in the highway business. I think what we talked about on Monday would be that the separation between retail establishments is something that, based on this meeting and the continuation, I think if we understand the range of potential changes that we would seek some input from the city attorney, just to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. But in terms of the general scope, I would say that this discussion is well within that scope. And then if I think, as Councilor Peak said, if there's some, review or additional review and input sought by the planning board, I think that makes some sense. It's not required, however, I don't think at this stage.
Okay, Councilor Zarek.
Planner Bagg kind of touched on some of the stuff that I was just going to mention. So we've talked about, we still haven't had attorney review for this, and I think that, so the general language that came out of the planning board hasn't really changed. We've kind of added some ornaments, I guess, for lack of a better term, to the framework that was provided there, vis-a-vis, potentially eliminating the buffer between businesses and potentially setbacks on overlap when they abut residential zones. So I think, I'm just thinking out loud here that it might be good to get the main meat of the amendment off to the attorney, because this still hasn't been reviewed. And we talked we did talk at ordinance 2 about trying to get some consensus about even the recommended amendments, that those should be reviewed as well. I just think, just for the sake of, ongoing public hearings, we should just make sure that this is sound.
And I don't know, I have a question, and I don't know if it goes to Councilor Derby or Planner Bagg, but is the artifact that we are working from what Jeff displayed today, absent these 3 changes? So the script that Jeff had, and we just saw, that's what we have. And everything that's underlined and in red is the new stuff. And then you have 3 things you talked about on Monday, but they have not been incorporated into any sort of a document for a final document. And I agree that final document, although we may have changes that night, I would like to see some sort of sign off from the attorney before we get to a place where we're actually going to have to vote on it. And I don't know if you have more iterations, you're going to have more conversations. If this tonight is one, and then we will continue the public hearing, get more input, possibly make additional changes. Do you have a sense, Councilor Derby, like where we stand on changes?
Yeah, so you're correct to say that the main document that that Planner Bag showed was what we were working off of. So that piece is we're working off of that, and then the 3 amendments would be in addition to that. And I have them in writing, but I haven't vetted them with Planner Bag, and which I think is really the best way to do that. And so what I was hoping, so he has the written amendments that I wrote up on those 3 issues. I'm hoping that when we meet next time as a committee, we can get that language solidified and then have it reviewed by the attorney at that point.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
Okay, good.
Does it? Hang on, Dan. Councilor Kwasinski?
Thank you. I think we caught up with all this. I did have a question for Planner Bag, just for clarification, back to your screen sharing of the report that you started with, if you might. I would ask you to maybe, if you can, put that back up and describe to us the plots that you showed and exactly where they are in the city. I know you said there's this parcel, there's that parcel, but I don't think they were located and described. This is the street, that's the street, this is the intersection, just so everybody understands what we're changing and where it is located.
Sure. And is that just for the general orientation?
Yeah, that basically was the point, to say that, it's not, obviously we're talking about the possibility of the former Tasty Top property.
Right.
It would be one place that it would apply to, but there were others. I think it's important for the public, especially during this time where we're all meeting remotely, to really locate them and understand where they are.
Sure. That's helpful. Yeah, I can do that. Can everyone see this? This is the
I had a few other questions, but let's start with that.
Can everyone see the colored zoning map here?
Yep.
The area that we're speaking about in general terms is the Highway Business District. So it's the purple area it's demarked by the HB. So I'll zoom in, but this is Route 10. I'm going to get tested on some of my side streets. I know that this yellow area here, where it's marked as R10, this is the Colonial Ave neighborhood. So one of these streets is Colonial Ave, and it butts up against the Highway Business District here. It's this street on the left, which I do not know the name of, but here's West Street at the bottom. So you're leaving West Street and you're going around the turn, and then you enter into the Highway Business. And so the Highway Business District goes all the way to the city line as you enter into Northampton. This street here is O'Neill Street, and on the left here is Lyman Street. And I'll zoom in on the next map, but this amendment applies to the whole Highway Business District. This is a little bit more zoomed in. This is an aerial with, again, the purple is the Highway Business. So I apologize because I don't know the streets on the left here.
It's
Groveland. Yeah, Groveland may be the last one. The person who used to have all those winter ornaments up on the lawn, the big, that's this corner lot here, and I'll zoom in. So that's the beginning of the Highway Business District. And then, we've had a person attending these meetings. The owner of this last property here is a residential property in a residential district. And it's, it's the beautiful Victorian house with the solar panel. That's how a lot of people know it. That's the boundary of the Highway Business District. And then as you go up into Route 10, you're entering. Yes.
I think, and I don't want to speak for Councilor Kwasinski, but I think we know where the Highway Business District is. What are the potential plots of land that would be impacted by this? In other words, where would plots of land be that would be amenable to building a building or putting in a cultivation in that location? Like, are there properties along the Highway Business District that could be fair game.
Yep. Thank you. That's good. Give me some direction. This is the Northampton side. This is the end of the Highway Business District. So if you look, this is Valley Medical. And this building down here is Easthampton Savings Bank, and there's O'Neill Street. So technically by size, this property contains it's like 2 buildings and a law office and a couple of little offices, 4.25 acres. Actually, it's not eligible under the current language where we set it to 5 acres, but there was a discussion, I think, about lowering the threshold to 3, which could come up. I apologize. I didn't practice this. This property is actually, this is
next to Cumberland Farms.
Yes, thank you. Yep. So Cumberland Farms, the area highlighted in blue is a vacant parcel adjacent to Cumberland Farms, and it is 3.84 acres. So again, it wouldn't be of a size significant, it wouldn't achieve the 5 acres, which is the current threshold. But if we did lower the dimensional requirement to 3 acres, then this parcel would be a potential vacant parcel. I'm going in the wrong direction, I apologize. This is the Cook Building Supply property. And what it's just trying to illustrate is lot area size is 4.21 acres. The larger building to the bottom of the page is the post office. And I believe the post office is also on a parcel that's 4.29 acres. This is the Boyle property where the 3 buildings were built in the past couple of years with the commercial on the first floor and apartments above. This is a parcel that's 3.76 acres. And then this is the parcel on the corner here. This is Highland Ave. The building at the top is Papa George Pizza with a couple other commercial tenants. So then these 2 parcels are under the same ownership and would be large enough to support, potential cannabis cultivation under the 5 acres. So this is 8.24 acres. This is the Tasty Top parcel here, which constitutes 11.3 acres, and so that would be a size lot that would accommodate the 5 acre requirement. And that, I believe, that's our orientation for now. I would like to stop and see if there's questions.
No, I'd like to thank you for that. I think that was very helpful. So basically, it looks like the areas that would be residentially impacted would be the Tasty Top parcel in Colonial, Northampton Street, and Plymouth Avenue areas, and Highland Avenue by Papa George and Northampton Street for the most part, and also some impact with Ballard Street backing up to the parcels where that currently are being built on by River Valley, and where Boyle has just put up 3 buildings that would back up to Ballard. So thank you. I was mostly concerned about the residential impacts here. So thank you. I did have questions about the buffer areas and the three points that were brought up at the last ordinance meeting. If I understand them, you're talking now 150-foot buffer for a cannabis growing facility separate from any residential property line, so that the building could be no closer than 150 feet. If I also understand correctly, that that there be a reduced size from 50,000. Oh no, the question was whether we have a new additional building up to 25,000, or even more than one building to be built above the original 25,000, which seems to me like a question that I think presents some challenges and some opportunities. But as we look toward, we currently have a state where Massachusetts allows for cannabis. All right, so cannabis must be grown and then sold within the state. There may very well come a time in the near future where cannabis will be federalized, allowed on a national level. and therefore presumably the growing could occur across state lines, which would allow anyone who is well established to continue to grow their facilities and multiply if they have a good base already. I know there had been some consolidation in the business. I had heard that there was some major players who had actually downsized, hoping then eventually to bring their facilities into one location. So has anyone given that any further thought, and how large might this become?
I guess I'll field that one. So we that was something that we have talked about, because in spirit, the idea of reusing buildings is a really noble thing. I mean, with the mills, it was a really great way for us to revitalize, some blighted areas. So far it hasn't turned out necessarily that we've been able to really incentivize people to reuse buildings to grow. And yet, I mean, it's not saying it's not going to happen. And, it's just, one of the things around having new construction is you can make it exactly for the purpose that it's made for. And it can be as energy as efficient and probably more airtight, so there's less odor leakage and those types of things. But we did talk significantly about, total growing space. And it was felt by the other members of the committee, and I basically acquiesced that, having anything more than 25,000 square feet in the highway business at this moment might be a little bit too much. This is zoning. So if we find that in 5 years there's a real need for increased capacity, then we can revisit it. But at this point, we felt that even if someone was reusing a building and they wanted to expand, that they should be limited to the 25,000 square foot footprint.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Riss?
Thank you. Salem, two questions. The 150-foot buffer, it's not just limited to the growing facility, isn't it also the buildings that are for retail? So all of the buildings, say, at the Tasty Top site would be 150 feet from the property line. Am I correct in that you're thinking?
So that's a good question. And so, one of the things, like I said, this is an amendment that has not been fully formed and vetted yet. I mean, we're kind of, that's why we've been discussing it. But the way that I wrote it was for the manufacturing and growing facility would be the one that would be subject to the 150-foot buffer. We didn't word it so the other buildings would be, but they would be, subject to the other buffers in the planned business development, which require, foliage and I think it's an extra buffer on what a normal residential buffer is. And, I think I speak for I don't want to speak for the other members of the committee, but, all of us feel that adding extra barriers to one particular industry just because of the industry that it is, isn't necessarily the fairest way to go. We're putting this buffer in as kind of as an extra mitigation piece to alleviate concerns that neighbors might have around having, cultivation near their property. So we at this point there is no extra buffer for, say, if they were going to have a souvenir shop.
The other question is the 25,000 square foot limitation. Does that apply to any building that might be proposed in the future? Or is it just applying to cannabis cultivation?
At this moment, and this is a discussion that we've had, if we're going to put a 25,000 square foot cap on cannabis cultivation, maybe we should look at that, across the board. But at this moment, right now, it would only apply to cannabis cultivation.
I would ask you to do that. I would feel that that's important, because otherwise we're limiting cannabis, and then someone's going to build a big, I don't know what kind of store next, on land that Jeff just brought up, that's 30,000 square feet or 40. It doesn't seem fair. I like the 25, and given that some of the buildings that are already there are less than 25, including Cumberland Farms, I think, Jeff, you said that was like 19 or 20. I think 25 is a good figure for all buildings. I don't know what that means in writing your zoning, but that's just my opinion.
River Valley, I think, is smaller than 25. And I would say, Dan, I don't know if you remember, but back when Mike Tiskus was on the council, that's when we passed the 50,000 square foot, and it was in response when we were concerned about Walmart back in the old days.
I remember that, and I actually remember Mike. Gosh,
yeah.
Boy, am I feeling old. Okay.
Councilor Zaret?
Thank you, President Conniff. So my understanding in this discussion was that a couple things. One is that just to kind of as a means of background, 25,000 square feet for cultivation space is actually, as far as the industry is concerned, rather not very big. INSA, I believe, is pushing like 100,000 square feet. At least from my inference and my understanding of the discussion was that there was a concern that building large buildings just solely for the sake of cultivation were not necessarily 100% within the intention of the highway business district, and that they veer more into more of an industrial use and something you would see in industrial zones, and certainly in other municipalities, isolated cultivation buildings are more industrial. So the thought here, and one of the reasons that it was combined at the planning board level was combined with retail, was kind of as a nod to the intentions and the scope of the highway business district. And the planner and the chair can correct me if I'm wrong. And so that's kind of how we landed here. So that there's a few important parts of the language. One is that it's a lot easier potentially to repurpose a 25,000 square foot cultivation space than it is 50,000. And, if you look at the highway business district and the way that the spaces there have potentially been used, I think there was concern that any one of the retail spaces there, or generally retail/commercial spaces, could be easily repurposed for another retail/commercial purpose. But a big, essentially big empty building that would be used for cultivation, say, certainly 25,000, but definitely 50,000, 35,000, that gets a little bit more complicated. And I think that was part of the thought process that kind of helped us arrive at both the size as well as the clause that it has to be attached to retail in order to make that okay as well. So that I just wanted to offer that as kind of a clarifying statement. Am I remembering that correctly? Is that how we arrived at that?
I would say that you characterized it appropriately. Yeah.
So I have a question/comment. So in all of this conversation, we're talking about building a new building somewhere in the city. We think this property at Tasty Top lends itself to that eventuality. We're talking about how we don't want to limit or create barriers to cannabis by the way that we create zoning. Zoning should be agnostic to the business going in there. And I don't know that I agree with that on the highway business district strip. I feel like cannabis grow opportunities are different. They're different than a Stop and Shop. They smell different. They produce different safety issues. And I have, so when we talk about the size of a building, for me, it absolutely matters that this is a cannabis facility versus a grocery store or something else, a strip mall, in that space. I'm not saying that somewhere else in the city, particularly in the industrial zone, might lend itself more to that. I think my caution on all of this is that that particular space is very, it's unappealing to me for that to be a place for a grow facility in that location, right at the start of our highway business district, right coming out of residential. That's the first thing you hit. I think there is a smell component, and certainly, yes, maybe technology will improve as we go through it, but you can smell INSA And it's depending upon where you're coming from, it's an appealing smell or not. I find it very unappealing. But so what I'm trying to get at here is that while I appreciate that, we're looking at all of the things around building a building and creating zoning, I think it does matter what's going in there. And I think we need to think about that. And the only question I have is, did you guys consider, and has there been a conversation around safety of what comes into a cannabis grow operation and how or if that needs to be mitigated?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's inherent in the conversation. I would say that claims about safety have been widely exaggerated. And so that's important to recognize. We have legal cannabis grows all over the state of Massachusetts for, multiple years now with literally zero incidents. If the incidents that have been, forwarded to the council and have been talked about are illegal butane extraction operations that are not regulated. The state of Massachusetts regulates these things very, very strictly. So, and I would take exception to saying that there's a safety issue for a cannabis grow facility. Other than, there are issues around extraction using butane, which INSA is doing at that site, and is doing it safely. But growing cannabis, it does not present a danger to the public. And so I want to put that out there as loud and clear as I can. The only, really the only thing that, you have some pressurized carbon dioxide, which is not an explosive gas. And that is used, carbon dioxide is used as a growth accelerant. It's injected with the air that goes in. It's not a danger. And it uses electricity. We've talked about that. How do we mitigate that? And I would say that, anything that goes there, so, we talked about this on Monday. I think the setback is 35 feet. So if you put a TJ Maxx or you put a grocery store, think about deliveries coming in potentially 24 hours a day with lights and noises and refrigeration, and then, then you have refrigeration chemicals that are, so I guess I would take exception to saying that this is any sort of safety hazard beyond any other use that could go there.
Okay. Councilor Zarrett? You're on mute. You are on mute.
Just to address a few things you brought up also, I would agree with Councilor Derby regarding the safety. There's definitely a pretty sufficient inspection process. And so I'm not as concerned about that, but one kind of salient point you did touch upon was that's been kind of the crux of the discussion is kind of the types of building. And that's been kind of the what these discussions have been revolving around, as I touched upon before, is constructing, say, a new retail space, that if it becomes vacant, is that more easily reused than, say, a large space for cultivation? That was kind of the original. That's how my understanding was, that's how we originally arrived at this restriction, was because we were concerned about the construction of these large spaces that may or may not be as easily reused, and whose application also may, again, not necessarily be as consistent with highway business. But I'm not saying it's not consistent, because if you look at some of the table of uses, like for instance greenhouses are okay. So that's kind of the quagmire and kind of the nuance of this whole issue. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's kind of the whole crux of the issue, and I don't have an answer for it. And I think what you just said earlier is kind of the ongoing question around this.
Right. And I would also add, sorry, Jeff, I'll defer in 1 second. I would add that one of the ways we can look at this is the way it's written. If there is a small grow operation of 25,000 square feet or less, it has to be attached to retail. So, and if you look at our experience with microbreweries and craft breweries. This could be kind of something. Now, we're not to the point yet where you can go and visit a cannabis production facility or sample, but I'm not convinced that that's not going to happen. And I think that this could lend itself to those types of things potentially in the future. So, I think that, while highway business might not be your automatic catching zone for a cannabis production facility, because it has retail attached, it potentially insulates it for the future. So that was just something that I've thought about.
Planner Bag.
I'll be brief. I was just going to say, there has been a lot of discussion about the highway business district in general and the character of it. And so I think it's been identified that that is something that goes on the list for like a to-do list in the future. We do have to grapple with the question at hand, which is whether the cannabis cultivation is a suitable use. So that has come up, and I know that there's kind of both sides of that coin here. We have the Tasty Top parcel, which has been underutilized and for quite some time. We have other vacant parcels that have been vacant for many years. And so we can potentially just wait and hope that something else comes here. Or we could talk about potentially, allowing this new business model to come in. One thing I just wanted to say about the 150 feet from residential properties is in the discussion on Monday, it was something that had not been evaluated yet. And so there should be some mapping exercises that are done. And I just wanted to put a plug in that the 150 feet is a distance that I'm not going to say it was picked out of a hat, but there's nothing to it yet to make that substantially the right number. It could be 100 feet, could be 150 feet, but what I wanted to just broach for a continued meeting is the setback from Route 10 was originally discussed to be 100 feet. And one of the reasons I think was what Councilor Coniff said was, how would one of these buildings present itself as you're driving down Route 10? And 100 feet was originally chosen because it would either require the building to be set back quite far so that it would be farther from the street and it would not be so obvious. The 100 feet was also chosen because if you look at the pattern of Route 10, several of our existing buildings, if you take Abashan, for example, you could get a building and a small parking area. You could get a retail establishment within the first 100 feet. And that would help maintain the character of Route 10 by either pushing a larger building back or allowing something to go up front. So one thing I just wanted to broach is, this idea of the setback from Route 10, for example, if we look at going to 100 feet, I think it would show the comparison of going 100 feet from a side property or a setback from a residential district being 100 feet, because it's the same idea as, do you want to see a large building right up against Route 10? Not really. And so we talked about either 75 or 100 feet. And I think it's the same discussion about the separation from residential is things like odor would get mitigated through a permitting process and lights get permitted and regulated through a permitting process. So it's really just, what is that visual separation that you would find? So I think those numbers might slide or change slightly, but I think the idea is that we're looking at a residential setback and probably a setback from Route 10.
Jeff, for context, is 100 feet roughly, I can't visualize 100 feet. How far is it to like the tee boxes for the driving range from the street? Is that 100 feet? Is that more than 100 feet?
I would say it's just shy of that. We did a couple, I have the maps, they're in the packet. We did a couple illustrations of.
But it's in that vicinity of the tee boxes, plus or minus something. Okay. That's right. You don't have to be.
I can see on the map that I have here, it's about 150 feet from to the tee boxes. So, okay. That Tasty Top building is close, and then there's the parking area. So that would be about 100 feet. And then you get to the tee boxes and you're probably about 150 feet.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. I'll go with Councilor Flood and then Councilor Rothschild.
I just wanted to echo a couple concerns I heard. I mean, really, the reuse of these buildings later on. I know that cannabis right now, we're in a boom, but the consolidation does concern me for the future. So I do think it's very important to think about how these buildings could possibly be reused down the road. And also, I feel very comfortable with the 25,000 square foot, so it's not just this monstrous industrial looking building. But I also like the idea of lowering the threshold to the 3 acres that Planner Bag mentioned, to make some of these other parcels that you've pointed out maybe a little more worthy of exploration. It does feel like this is being tailored to that one property, and perhaps if we can open up the discussion to some of the others, that could be, it could just open up some more possibilities. So I don't know, that was my main points to make.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rothschild.
Well, just in terms of the discussion, Councilor Coniff, you brought up that's something maybe we don't want right at the entry of our business district, but currently we can have grow operations in our business district, right? Just if they're an existing building, right? Yeah, so it feels like it's not for us to decide, like say there was an existing building there, they would already be able to go there given the zoning. So I just am a little uncomfortable with the judgment of what kind of businesses are in what areas of his highway business district.
Okay, that's fair. Any other questions? Hang on, JP. First, Councilor Zaret, and then Councilor Kwasinski.
Just something I pointed out yesterday too. At the end of the day, if this language does go through, that it's basically going to create zoning for a very narrow amount of applicants. In other words, we currently have 4 approved special permits of 6. So after we go through all this work, at the most, basically what this does is creates new availability in the highway business district for 1, maybe 2. And I know my understanding is there's another special permit application kind of pending. So at the end of the day, we were doing all this work essentially for maybe 1 special permit if someone chooses to apply for one in the highway business district that fits that need, as opposed to building reuse. So just wanted to put that out there too. I mean, it's neither here nor there, but just in terms of pulling this into perspective, what this would do would not necessarily create a whole bunch of new construction in the highway business district with cultivation facilities. It would maybe create 1 somewhere. So that just offering perspective.
Councilor Kwasinski.
Just following up on President Coniff's comment about what is the entry point to the highway business district from our community, from the residential area nearby. Our current zoning doesn't allow for any new construction for cannabis facilities. So this is why we're discussing this new zoning ordinance. Currently, what we have is an ability to build other types for other types of uses. And I guess the pause I have for the moment is we have an opportunity to look at this. This is the biggest view amenity I can think of in the city, and certainly the biggest view amenity we have in this zoning district and the R10 zone behind it. I would like to think that we're not missing an opportunity to utilize that space for the entire public in some way. I'm sure Planner Bag could educate us as to the city's plan, the master plan, how it fits in. But I'm thinking, geez, if we had, we're probably never going to see this again, but at the time that malls were becoming the thing and the outlet malls were the thing, they built off the road behind great shrubbery and had beautiful locations for the public to visit. And you could look at the mountain. I just would like to think that we could be creative about that for the future. Just Councilor Bag, Planner Bag, any thoughts about how this fits into the master plan?
It's definitely a little tricky. People have identified the view of this, the parcel, the view from Route 10 over the parcel, but it's been highway business zone since highway business zone was created. I think I guess what I think you were suggesting is the idea of like buying the property for open space, but I believe that the cost would be totally prohibitive, given that it's zoned for business now. I just don't. I would say that our master plan, if nothing else, wants to encourage this property to be developed for either commercial purposes or housing. It's very developable. I think that it's tricky. I think the view came up a few times. I think the realization was that if someone else were to build there, they can build a 3-story building 25 feet from Route 10. And so if anything, we talked about pushing a new building back 100 feet. There was a discussion about lowering the maximum height for cannabis from 3 stories to 2. But I think it was the same kind of discussion was if someone else could build something at 3 stories, then, and cannabis can't, we're kind of singling out that one industry. But I know the view has been mentioned, but I think it's a little tricky for a purpose of potentially not allowing construction there for the view. I think it creates a couple of questions about how would you preserve the view.
Okay.
I think I was thinking more in terms of usage and participation of having it be a public space where all could share in that view amenity. Even if it were housing, that would lend itself to pretty much anyone being able to go there if there were enough housing units and public spaces.
I think I would like to let a member of the public speak. They've been very patient, and I wanted to get the questions out from the City Council first, but I think we're now going into theoretical conversations. So I would like to have Danielle Martineau, if you would like to make a comment at this time, you can take yourself off mute and go for it.
Yes, thank you. I just have a clarification question. So I'm wondering if the 25,000 square foot cap is for the lot or is it per building? So will that mean that potentially a developer could build 5 25,000 square foot buildings in one lot if it allows, if the lot is big enough?
Councilor,
I'm only the city planner. I'm not a councilor. I think it's a fair question, and the answer is that yes, multiple buildings. And this does not prevent multiple buildings. It creates a size cap of a single building. So I think that's important to know. And the idea is that it would break up instead of. So this is where, and I'll just be brief, but this is where it all started. Is we started the conversation: should we allow cultivation in new buildings? And it was, let's pursue this. And at the beginning, there was no cap. And that's what happened in 2018 is that without any limitations, this building could be, 100,000 square feet, 200,000 square feet. And there was nothing to create a top limit. We talked about 50,000 square feet, and then we brought it down to 25. But I would say that it applies only to a single building, and it could, presently written, it could allow for multiple buildings.
Okay. Danielle, if you'd like a follow-up question, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, I had one more question that I forgot to ask. So my other question is, and I know we're not talking specifically about a particular developer, but I mean, we are a little bit, right? Because there is a developer that proposed on a particular site, which is the Tasty Top site. And when looking at this proposal, I was looking at it pretty closely, and it looks like they have a fenced-in area that is just green space. And they didn't discuss this in the community engagement meeting, but I was thinking that they probably had the potential of growing hemp outdoor cultivation because there's no, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, there's no regulations about hemp cultivation. And as somebody who owns property adjacent to that particular property, I'm very concerned about smell, the looks of that, but mostly smell. I think, I did a lot of research, and hemp is still very smelly and can be definitely a nuisance. And I was just wondering if you guys discussed anything about that. I know hemp and cannabis are different in terms of zoning, but they definitely go hand in hand. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Councilor Derby, Planner Bag, anyone like to respond?
I'll defer to Planner Bag because he probably has the statute in front of him. I believe that outdoor cultivation was not allowed in maybe any of the zones except for maybe way out in R40. I don't even know if we allowed it there. I know that we had talked about it, but maybe not even there. No. So I'll let Planner Bag.
No, I appreciate that, Councilor Derby. I think that's where we ended up. I believe that the previous speaker asked this question, and I think it's on the research list. But when we were doing the amendments in 2018, the discussion was had about allowing outdoor cultivation in the residential districts, and it was determined at that time that we didn't have enough information and we didn't have enough time to really set up proper considerations for it. And so the way it got worded is that, especially in the highway business, which is what we should be talking about here, is it is currently only allowed in an existing building. And if you read it that way, it means that it's not allowed outside. But the important thing, I think, for everybody to understand is that that's cannabis, which is regulated by the Cannabis Control Commission, which is different than hemp. So hemp is regulated by the Department of Agricultural Resources, MDAR, and they made big strides 2 years ago to allow hemp cultivation with no permitting. It's a protected agricultural use. And some of you might recall that when we were doing the zoning in 2018, what we were able to do is at least put it under site plan review with the planning board, so that if there was an outdoor hemp cultivation anywhere in town, they would at least have to come to the planning board, which would at least notify property owners within 300 feet. But it's by right, which means that the planning board would have a very difficult time denying hemp cultivation. So I think the previous speaker I think she just re-raised her hand, but I think that's an important distinguishment, that hemp is a protected sort of class, whereas cannabis, and it's debatable, but cannabis got put into a different category that is regulated under zoning.
Okay. Danielle?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to make sure I have some answers. So my other question is pertaining to the retail portion of this amendment. So I know that in order to have marijuana cultivation, you're requesting that there also be retail. Can the retail building be separate from the cultivation? So that means that potentially you could have multiple, and I know that you said that you could have multiple 25,000 square foot buildings on properties. Does that mean that you could have like a 25,000 square foot retail and 25,000 square foot cultivation, and then maybe another 25,000 square foot cultivation center, or do you have a cap, like only one cultivation center per lot, only one retail, only one manufacturing? So that's my first question. My second question, the point I just want to make about the safety issues, as far as I'm concerned, the cultivation, I did go to many different marijuana establishments, in Massachusetts, and I am still very concerned about safety. And as far as I'm concerned, I know that they use a lot of natural gas and propane, and they have to store the propane, which is pressurized gas, and that is what can be explosive. But I also know that the extraction process is really, really hazardous. And I understand there's regulations. However, the reason why there's regulations is because there's a potential for hazards. Regulation doesn't guarantee safety, it just makes it safer. So there's always a possibility of something happening. I believe in Murphy's Law. And so I just wish that you just consider that possibility for safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zaret.
Just a quick aside, President Conniff, since these concerns about safety and such have come up, do you think it would be possible for the next public hearing and following this topic to maybe invite one of the representatives from the fire department to do these inspections just to go over this?
Of course. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Councilor Rist.
I know we're running to the end of this. I would just like to suggest that we don't have this public hearing again until the amendments are ready and they've been vetted by the city attorney. I just don't want to have another meeting in which we're not going to vote on this. I just like to see this get to an end. And I don't know, Councilor Derby, what your timeline is for all this, but if you could continue the public hearing to a date that you think you might be ready, given that you have to send it to the city attorney. I don't know.
I hear that. So I was planning on continuing to the 18th, but I mean, if continuing to the 2nd, it gives us a little bit more buffer, which I think is fine. So I'm happy to look at doing that. And that even potentially could allow us to meet more than once between here and the next public hearing. So
I'm going to ask you, Councilor Derby, to move it to the 2nd. We have 4 public hearings on the 18th already. And
so we'll go to the 2nd. And I don't know if we want to allow any more, if anybody else from the public has any other questions before I make. So I would like to announce our next meeting, and I'd like to, make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Okay, 1 second on that. Let me just check with the public. Any other further questions or comments from the public before we move the public hearing out? Not seeing it. Oh. Daniel Martineau.
I'm sorry. I just was wondering if you could answer the question about the buildings. Like, is it possible that you could have multiple cultivation centers and multiple retail centers in one lot?
Yeah, sorry. I can try. The way you could. So I think we already established that, especially with regard to the 25,000 square foot building cap, there could be more than one building for cultivation. The best answer I can provide you, I think, at the moment is that what we would expect is one retail establishment, and it because there's requirements at the Cannabis Control Commission about ownership of these establishments in terms of their cultivation license, which is one thing, and then they get a retail license, and they're all covered through the same ownership and some permitting at the state. So I would expect a retail establishment to be a small building, or that it's part of a larger building. So you might have, you're not going to have, you're not going to have a 25,000 square foot retail facility because it just would be very impractical. The retail spaces that seem to be trending now are 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. So they're relatively small because they want to have control over where patrons are, and they usually have a back area and that kind of thing. So I believe that's not about this amendment. That's not about this one project, but the proposal that the TC Top folks put forward showed a retail building of about 5,000 square feet. And then they had and I had it in the packet, they had a 22,000 square foot cultivation facility and then a manufacturing building. So you could get multiple buildings, but only the cultivation you would expect to be larger. I hope that, I'm trying to answer, so I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, I would like to okay, JP.
Well, and just a reminder that we are going to be meeting on this next week,
Right.
and we are going to have another public hearing.
Exactly. Yep. Go ahead, Councilor Kwasinski.
I was just going to ask Councilor or Planner Bag, if I understand correctly, all of the manufacturing or cultivation facilities would have to be under a single ownership in conjunction with the retail in the somewhere on the property. Is that correct?
I guess that's something that I would want to, and maybe I can take Ms. Martinell's question and chalk it up to trying to answer it more clearly the next meeting. You asked about ownership, and I mentioned ownership. I don't know what the regulations are currently, that if there could be a 25,000 square foot building that occupied by company A and company B could be in another building. I don't know. That I would imagine that might be possible.
Or a cultivation park.
Yes, in theory, it could be that. And let me do some additional research to try to answer that one more specifically.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Derby, I think at this point, since we are going to be continuing the hearing, let's go ahead and make that motion at this point.
Okay. So I'll make the motion, then I'll announce our next meeting. So I'd like to move to continue this public hearing until December 2nd at 6:15 on this Zoom call.
Second.
Motion second to continue the public hearing for cannabis zoning till December 2nd at 6:15. Any further discussion? Barbara.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zarrett. Owen Zarrett.
Aye. Sorry, just getting to my unmute.
Meg Haniff.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Erica Flood.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Hearing is continued till December 2nd.
Okay, so I wanted to just announce that we are going to be meeting Wednesday, November 11th at 6 p.m. And anybody that would like to discuss this, please come. We'll make this the first item on the agenda because we do have some other things to cover. And it looks like Dan has a question.
Well, I was going to schedule finance at 5. What do you think, Peg? Should we change that, or maybe?
We'll figure it out. We have 4 accounts in the city. We'll figure it out.
Okay, so we can continue.
We have one at 5 and one at 6.
All right, we'll keep it at 5.
Different Zoom accounts if we have to. Okay. Anything else on this public hearing, Councilor Derby?
No.
Okay. All right. The last item on our agenda for the public hearings is a presentation by the developer of One Industrial Lofts, Mr. Michon. I want to ask, and maybe I need to ask Planner Bag, do we need to have a quorum of the planning board, and should the chair, Jesse Belcher-Timmy, take that quorum right now? Take that vote.
Yes and yes. And I see Jesse turn on the camera, and I counted there's all but one planning board member here.
Okay. Jesse, if you want to.
Yeah, I will call to order this public hearing for the Easthampton Planning Board. That's all we need, President Coniff. We're good. Thank you.
All right. Jeff, is there anything we need to do from the council, or should we just turn it over to Mr. Michon? Do you have any introductory comments you'd like to make?
I guess I would ask Mayor LaChapelle if she wanted to do any introduction. There's a transmittal packet for this project. And I don't see her turning on her camera. Oh, there she is. Mayor LaChapelle is responsible for receiving this application from the developer. Mayor, do you want to speak to this at all in terms of the transmittal process?
Yes. So the transmittal I put before this council is for the One Ferry Street project, which we've been working with the developer, Mike Michon, for the last really 2.5 years. This next step looks at where we are in the project, what the benefit, public benefit has been to this point, and what the public benefit will be going forward. This relies on the original partnership that I described to this council in the creation of the District Finance Improvement District, the DIF. and tax incentive packages to make sure that the private developer can leverage those tools in a finance improvement district to get financing for mass housing, mass development, tax credits, and quite honestly, just a better rate on private equity market or whatever the developer sees best fit for his project budget. This is a really important opportunity, and I look at it as a hallmark of this project for Easthampton that fits so nicely in our master plan. I always think of the well-folded charrette that Planner Bag pulls out and shows us what was planned so long ago by our city, and here's the capstone of One Ferry Street. We stepped up 2.5 years ago and said we would help the developer match with money to get private funding, which is really important that there is public participation, public acceptance, but also the public entity having skin in the game. So this presentation is a very top level presentation. It is the beginning of this council, as well as the planning board's review of the next steps of the project, and also a series of financial incentives for the private developer from the city that also gives the city guarantees of what they can expect for public benefit out of this. From here, I'll just quickly say procedurally, it goes, the planning board has their own process for this and reviewing materials and the transmittal, and then the city council has a role that is reviewing the finances of such project as put before you. The planning board has 45 days to deliver a report to city council, and then the city council has 90 days to present a report from me, feelings on the financial incentives and also scope of project. That said, and I think a lot of you are weary of me saying this, and I feel the smile coming from President Conniff's face. We are in unprecedented times and an unprecedented, exciting place in Easthampton's history. And I do pray upon this board to see fit to really vet this to the fullest possible extent, of course, for the public, but also keep in mind that our government in the last 3.5 years has done very well meeting development that is appropriate for our city at a pace for their development needs. And while we may have until February to go through this process, I'm certainly committed to assist this board in any way to have that process be complete with a vote, yay or nay, or recommendations, whatever they are, and know where we stand before February 2nd. So that said, Michael Michon, who is also the developer of Mill 180, has taken on the One Ferry Street project, which has laid dormant for decades, and also has been the site of at least 3 other attempted rehabilitations. And we now have One Ferry Street in front of us. He'll go through the details. We have one building that is completely open and occupied, One Ferry Street, or actually it says 3 Ferry Street on the side. There's parking there already, and we're hoping to have that road open in the next 10 days. So Mr. Michon, I know I saw you on the call at one point, and I know you have your team with you, and there's also some screen sharing. I'm going to turn off my camera and mute, but I'm certainly available for questions, President Conniff, as you see fit and as I should jump in.
Thank you. Mr. Michon, I've made you a co-host, so if you have any documents that you would like to share as you go through your presentation, feel free to go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for your time this evening. We're actually going to have first of all, let me introduce my team. So who I have with me tonight is Jane Mantaleski, who's a lead counsel, Jeff Daly, who's a part of my finance team. I have Lenny Applequist, who's part of our marketing and media team, and as well as Lee Chodas, who's part of the same team as well. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be actually handing the sharing over to Lenny.
Okay.
And then if we get into trouble, we're going to have Lee give us a hand. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation with Jane, and then we're going to go into some really cool stuff that we've done for our 3 Ferry Street building now that's 98% occupied.
Nice.
The other thing I just wanted to just mention, which is really important that the mayor brought up, so you all of you understand this timing wise, the 121A is really essential for the Ferry Street project because this project was not able to get historic tax credits, which was really irritating in this whole project because we took down one of the buildings, if you remember the one that had the bell tower on it, the Belvedere. We took it down because it was in such dire straits. We were afraid that some of our construction workers were going to get hurt with the building collapsing on them. So in doing that for the safety of the public and the workers, Galvin's office, who's in charge of the historic preservation grant money, turned us down. So that was a pretty bad shot for us financially. We did plan to anticipate those funds. The second part is for timing wise, the 121A is very critical in our performers going forward so that we know how to market this program and this project. We're ready to start marketing, but we can't market something that we don't truly know what we have. And what I mean by that is mass housing will literally take 6 months to get completed. So we're already behind the 8 ball with our timing. So just so you can understand, what we're up against on our end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with, I'll let Jane start off with the PowerPoint presentation. So if Lenny, you can see if we can start this and then we'll kind of work our way through it.
I've made both Jane and Lenny co-hosts, so either one of them can share their screen as they need to.
Okay, also, President, Madam Councilor, if you could also have Lee Chodas on there, just in case we ran into a serious technical issue.
Okay, find Lee.
You should be seeing the PowerPoint screen now.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Jane, all yours.
All right, thank you guys. I just wanted to start off and say thank you, Mayor, for working with us, and thank you to Mr. Begg and the City Council for working with us and having us here tonight. So essentially what One Ferry is trying to do here is develop or redevelop the project or redevelop some property at Ferry Street in Easthampton. As Mike already gave his overview, certain tax credits weren't able to come into fruition for the project, so different alternatives had to be discussed and researched. And one of those alternative thoughts was Mass General Laws, Chapter 121A. And so you're gonna have to bear with me as we change screens because I'm not in control of the screen. But if Lenny, if you could just go to the screen too. What Massachusetts General Laws 121A is essentially it's controlled by the Department of Housing and oversaw by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And what they do is allow and authorize the creation of certain urban renewal corporations by private people for undertaking various types of redevelopment for blighted, substandard, and decadent or derelict properties. The benefit of a 121A project is that as opposed to traditional real estate taxes that are paid by a developer for a project, the developer and the city enter into an agreement called a 6A agreement, and that's under the statute 121A section 6A. And it allows for the city and the developer to agree on what's called a pilot payment, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, as an alternative, essentially an alternative tax payment. And that allows two things. It allows one for the developer to have a knowledge as to what they're going to be paying for years going forward with respect to their project. And two, it allows the town or a city to get tax revenue from a property or properties which have remained blighted and derelict for a very long time. So there's both benefit to the town or a city and the developer in these type of arrangements. And one of the things that needs to be present for a 121A project to go forward, as the mayor did touch upon, is there needs to be a public use and benefit. And here, my client, One Industrial Lofts, intends to make a mixed-use project and it will have commercial as well as housing for residential as both aspects of its project. Lenny, if you wouldn't mind skipping to the next slide. So this is, I'm sorry, go back. This is what was 1 Ferry Street prior to Mr. Michon doing the one building at 3 Ferry Street. And as you guys know, you're from the town, you probably see this a lot and think, oh my gosh, can someone do something? So that is the current or a very recent overview. You can see the blighted conditions and it needs a little help. It needs some redevelopment. So if you wouldn't mind, Lenny, just switching the next slide. So again, just going over the payments, which is a big part of the 121A because you're doing, again, pilot payments in lieu of taxes. There are 3 payments and I want to go over those. The first one is, and these are all statutory payments. The first one is an excise payment, and this is paid through to the Department of Revenue. And once the Department of Revenue receives these funds from a developer, they then turn over and give those funds back to a town or city. This excise tax payment has a specific valuation. There's a 121A return that's filed with the Department of Revenue every year on, I believe it is either March 1st or March 15th. I'm thinking it's March 15th of every year with respect to this payment. That payment is equal to 1% of the valuation of the property and plus 5% of the gross income of the project. So that would include any receipts for anything with respect to a project like this, rents. So again, 1% of the valuation of the property and 5% of the gross income. The next payment is called, again, a 6A payment. And this is the payment that is negotiated between a town or city and the developer. And this is a negotiated payment between the town and so they come up with a number based upon, current tax rates and valuations as to the property or project and possible increases on a CPI basis. And those payments are paid as of April 1st every year. And those payments go directly to the town. They don't go through the Department of Revenue. They go directly to the town for its use. The third payment is called an excess income payment. And essentially 121As, because they do need to be a public use project and company, they are formed solely for the purpose of a 121A project. And they're limited dividend corporations, meaning that if they receive anything in excess of 8% of a return on their investment, then any of those excess profits after deductions and the like go to back to the city at some point in time. So if at any point in time the project does make an excess of that 8%, then that is another payment to the town. And it can be done in any given year. It may not be every year. It may not be ever at all. So that payment is not necessarily a guaranteed payment that the city would see, but there's the excise payment and the 6A payment, which are guaranteed payments to the city. Lenny, next slide, please. So a 121A project is entitled to a minimum of 15 years of this pilot payment status. But depending upon the project and the amenities and the public benefit of the project, it can go up to 40 years. We had initially requested that 40 years, but after negotiations with the town, we were able to come to a happy medium, and we're proposing now a 25-year pilot payment period. Lenny, next slide, please. And here is what we want it to be. As you know, again, 3 Ferry Street has already been completed and does have occupancy. And so that's at that front corner on the left-hand side. But the rest of that development is ready to be developed, and Mike's ready to get that started. But again, we just need to get this approval going. So Lenny, if you could just do the next slide, please. So I just wanted to go over some specifics. They're all in your packets, but I did want to kind of give an outline of how we got here. And again, the mayor did say, we've been going through this for, a good 2.5 years. There was a meeting with the assessors and financing with respect to assessed values and agreed values for a potential 121A project. We submitted our application back to the Department of Housing and Community Development in August of 2019. And we've been negotiating with the city. I mean, yes, we're in a pandemic, so things got a little bit delayed, but we've been negotiating with the city since that submittal. Currently, the property at Ferry Street is placed into an A&R. And that will be in place for the 121A development as well. So you'll have essentially only a few parcels, if not one parcel, for the 121A project. At some point in time, there will be subdivided out 1 or more parcels for a hydro plant that will be subject to a TIF, because you cannot use TIFs on the same parcel as a 121A. So that one will need to be separated out, and that will be subject to regular real estate taxes, as well as getting an abandoned building tax deduction on that specific parcel, which again, if you're having a 121A, you're not entitled to that deduction. When you're doing a 121A, that is essentially the only tax treatment you're going to get. You're not going to get any other sort of credits. What is intended to have happen here is there will be a owner of the parcel, and that owner will ground lease out the property to a developer. So the excise tax payment will be the 1% of the value that's agreed to by the assessors back in the meeting, and that happened back in 2018, early 2019, and 5% of essentially the tax payment that has been negotiated with the mayor and the city and the planner under the 6A agreement, because under the ground lease, the payment for the ground lease to the owner will be the pilot payment to the city. Any additional, there's going to be an additional amount under the 6A as well. And there has been a schedule that's been provided that does give out those numbers, and I'm sure the town will have that to look at as well. There's also the diff, and that can work together with the 121A. And under the 121A, with respect to the 6A payments, it is fully expected that, and Mike can attest that the diff will be completely covered by the 121A payments to the city every year. And again, there is a payment schedule, and I'm sure the town will look at that when it has its time. Lenny, if you could go to the next screen. And this, I'm going to, if you wouldn't mind, President Coniff, Jeff Daly, who is finance, can talk about some of the development timeline, the diff, to give some more information. Thank you. And if I'm here for questions, obviously at the end.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly, if you have something you'd like to add.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for the invite. Good to see everybody, mayor and city councilors and planner bag. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the development timeline and how it ties into the payments. So as you know, the mayor mentioned that building 3 is about 95% or 98% online. And Mike Michon will begin paying the taxes on that for the past 3 or 4 years that I've been working with Mike on this. The property actually had a negative value, and Mike's making the de minimis payment to the town for those taxes on the buildings because they do have a negative value. So even with building 3 coming online this year, the city's going to start seeing an increase in taxes next year when the tax bills go out. And the timeline for development, and Mike can jump in if he wants, but we're projecting that in 2023, building 5 would be done. Building 7, which is the largest of all the buildings, would be complete in 2025, and the pad sites on the eastern side of the site would be completed around the 2030 mark. So you can tell it is a phased project. There's a lot going on with it, but every time a new building comes online and gets a certificate of occupancy, the town will start seeing an increased tax revenue. And with that, we also would be putting in the DIF payments for the DIF program. We've talked about that in front of the council probably a year and a half ago now, and certainly we'll be bringing it back in to the calculations moving forward when we meet with the finance committee and others to really go through the numbers so that everybody's aware of what the payments will be and how it will tie into the DIF. But we anticipate a strong supporting tax through the 121A that could pay the majority of the DIF payments back over about probably a 10-year period that Jen Gallant and I have discussed, and we certainly can adjust that as needed. But we're confident that this project would generate enough taxes over the course of the 121A to pay that DIF debt service back. So with the project that it's moving quickly through the years, we feel that the 121A would create a significant tax uptick to the town, and also enough to cover the DIF payments to pay for that public infrastructure. And if there's any questions, we can certainly discuss it.
There's probably a lot of questions, but if we can answer it as best as possible before planning and finance, that'd be great. We can talk about the project. Anybody has questions before we continue? Now's the time.
You're muted.
Do we need to keep the presentation up for the questions, or?
No, we can. I think that should be the last slide, I believe, until we go into some photographs and stuff.
Okay.
Is that correct, Lenny?
I think that's correct, Mike. So I think we can let go of the PowerPoint at this point in time. And when you start, we can do the pictures.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Do any of the counselors have any questions for the Councilor Rist?
I just wanted to comment on process, councilors and planning board members. As I understand this is a presentation this evening. The presentation, then the public hearing is continued to a later date, and I'm going to work that out with Jeff before we set that tonight. And it is sent at the end of this discussion. I will make a motion to send this request to planning board and to finance. I recommend, given how late it is, you all have millions of questions, but they should be really vetted. I intend to have a finance meeting once I get the planning board's recommendation to deal with just this and with Mike's team. And at that time, questions which are very detailed about the financial aspects of this should be asked. If we get into too much detail this evening, it's all going to be done again. And I'm just going to request that we consider not getting too detailed into questions this evening, because the process requires planning board recommendation, then it comes to finance, and then I have to have a meeting in which we discuss this and vet the finances fully, and I certainly hope counselors will attend that meeting. So that's just my comment on the process as I understand it. Jeff, am I correct on this process? It goes to planning and to finance. We continue this public hearing maybe to the last meeting in December, and then that's when it'll come back. And the reason we're continuing it is so we don't have to advertise it again, et cetera. Am I correct on all that?
Yes. And, you know, the planning board is here, and we are interested in talking about having the planning board meet on November 17th. So that can come a little bit later, but we've charted out a potential date for the planning board to have a separate meeting just on this topic as well.
And I know we have 45 days for each of us, but I'm sure we'll try to get this done sooner to help the mayor out. As I understand it, Jeff, finance can't even act until we get the recommendation from planning. Am I correct on that?
I think that the finance committee could meet and could begin any discussions. The timeline would be that by December 19th, the planning board will have to issue a written report. So if it all works out, if the planning board were to convene on November 17th, and then another subsequent meeting sometime before December 16th, I think it is reasonable for the planning board to issue a report that would go to City Council for the December 16th date, which is my understanding is a meeting date that you have. So we would be targeting a planning board report by the 16th of December.
I think I have a preference to have that report in hand, but I'll discuss that with my committee members. Anyway, we'll try to get this done so we can have this public hearing. What is that, December 16th? Maybe in the last meeting in December, first meeting in January. I guess we have until February, so maybe the first meeting in January. Anyway, thank you. That's just my comment. I know we have a lot of questions on this, but there's a lot of vetting to be done.
Yeah, one thing I would like to just request of Mr. Michon is that as we go through this, if you could make your team available to these meetings so that the detailed questions that we may have, both the planning board and finance, could be addressed in kind of a team approach, because we don't know what we're going to ask until we get through this a little bit. But if that's doable as we go through finance and planning board, that would be helpful.
Sure. I think if we could just get some dates again, or if Jeff or somebody can follow up with dates that you would like us to participate, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I'd like to recognize from the planning board, Mr. Zarvis.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to just thank your comments, Councilor Rist. And I do have a lot of questions, but I'm going to keep them all off for what's coming later, except for one, which is about process and understanding the expectations of the planning board. My understanding is that you're going to be sending this to us, and we'll get something probably through Planner Bag. I'd like to call attention to one note. It's a single sentence at the bottom of the document we received as part of the mayor's transmittal. And there was a comment there from Linda Belzati from the Office of Sustainable Communities, where she says, please note that a mere recitation of the statutory findings by the planning board and the city council is not an adequate basis upon which the DHCD may make a determination. Factual justifications for the findings must be presented. And the only thing that I kind of want to bring up here is about the expectations from us. I've already started looking at this, and I'm sure the planning board will, in terms of coming up with what our findings are going to be. But that one sentence is very interesting to me, and I'm not sure if it's going to need to come from the planning board or from the city council after the fact, but it looks like that what we find needs an extra step on top of it. And I just wanted to make that comment in case it's something we need to consider in advance so that what we do present to you in 45 days is actually enough and works. Thank you.
Can anyone comment to that? Planner Bag?
Yeah, I think it's great that Member Zarvis mentioned this. I mean, I think that's the plan is if the planning board convenes on November 17th, the developers team will be present to describe the project in more detail. And just as an example, you know, in the same letter that you mentioned from March 3rd, 2020, you know, the planning board and city council ultimately need to find that the proposed project is qualifies under the definition of blighted, open, decadent, or substandard. So I think the idea is that you simply can't state that yes, the property, you know, qualifies as decadent, substandard, and so there has to be, you know, the reasoning behind that. And I think for many of these, you know, the other one is compliance or that it doesn't conflict with the master plan. So there is a lot of information, I believe, that's available to support that finding. And it's a lot like what the planning board does, you know, in reviewing projects is you have the requested finding and then you provide the facts behind that. So, you know, I will be there to support the planning board with that. And then the developer and their team will be present to give additional information as it might be necessary. And then ultimately the city council, you know, reviews that report and is asked to make, you know, concur with those findings. The financial element is a little bit different. And so that those components will go to the finance subcommittee to understand, you know, the nature of the agreement and the 6A agreement. And then those two things come together and city council will use both to make a final recommendation to the mayor.
Okay, Councilor Riss.
Well, if I understand you, Jeff, we're going to get a report with all the things Jim was mentioning, the facts, the legal language for that. And we're going to be looking simultaneously, I think we can, at the financial aspects of this. But both that report from planning, which has the detailed language that we need, and the fiscal reports both have to be approved eventually by the full city council. It's almost like two things. So all I'm going to ask is when we do meet on this, either Lawyer Jane or somebody gives us the detail of what I need, the committee needs to approve, okay? Because this is obviously there's a lot of legal issues here, and it'll speed up the process if there's some preparation done before we get to that meeting about what the finance. Besides looking at all the numbers and making sure we agree with them, what do we have to approve, and what does the city council have to approve? So that language is already developed. We may have to amend it or whatever, but at least a starting point. Does that make sense?
Okay, then I think at this point, I think unless there's any objections, can we go ahead and continue the public hearing?
The only thing was, did the applicant have more to present? Was there another component or piece?
Yes.
And then I think, yes.
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. You did have more that you wanted to share.
I think, okay, also, let me just make a point. Councilor Riss brought up, and again, Madam President. So, you know, the document that you have, you know, your council, your city attorney has already actually gone through that on the legal side of it. Just so I wasn't sure if you were aware of that or not. So you really have the negotiated copy of what we came up with.
Okay. Good. So I'm not sure I got an answer. Is your presentation complete at this point?
No, we'll continue. So,
Go for it.
Lenny. Okay, so this is kind of, so this whole project, I started this in 2017. That's how long ago I started with an agreement with the previous owner. And we photo documented the entire project from 2017 to current. So we have about, actually of this project as well as the MassWorks project, we've accumulated over 10,000 photos. So we're obviously not going to do that tonight. So we've kind of narrowed them down just to kind of paint a picture of what's been going on and the teamwork, the public-private venture with MassWorks, with the Ferry Street project, as well as the build-out of the 3 Ferry Street building. And let me just, I'll just go a little bit further too so I can explain. So the purpose of the entities, so the entities that are going to own these buildings are actually the number. So the first building is the address is 3 Ferry Street, is actually going to be also 3 industrial lofts. And it'll continue with the balance of the buildings. It'll be 5 Ferry Street, which is the building behind this, 7 Ferry Street, and then across the canal, the hydro plant is 9 Ferry Street, 11 Ferry Street, and since nobody wanted 13, we jumped to 15. So 15 Ferry Street, as well as the entities that'll be the tenant or the tenant of the building. So go ahead, Lenny. We can start. Just go through some of the pictures relatively slowly here, so we can see how we started off here. We decided to memorialize again the Belvedere. That building was built in the late 1860s. Approximately, so we decided to use that as our logo for the entire project. Obviously, that Belvedere is on the ground now. We're going to put that on site, and that'll end up being a rose garden gazebo on the project itself. So this just starts myself walking the site with our geotechnical engineers, which we started with, and then it's fast framed to about 2 years, where it starts to show the Ferry Street project, the road being closed, and then some of our motley crew guys in building 3. And you can go ahead, Lenny, just scroll through there. The demolition of the building. Obviously significant site work. And I have to honestly say Gomes Construction have been doing this for 35 years, and they are one of the premium site developers around, hands for sure.
So that's the end of that one. You want the next page?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So then we have 3 Ferry, which now you've have seen completed, and we have some exterior pictures which we can kind of go into a larger size, and we'll just scroll through these. This is a pretty cool drone shot. This is the interior. I know there's been a lot of questions, and we really haven't come out with this. And we do have an anchor tenant that we were working with from the very beginning on this project as a build out. They're a 10-year tenant. Unfortunately, they're in the travel business and higher education. So I am working with them financially to make sure that they can continue their tenancy, which shouldn't be a problem. But this is their space. They're taking, they actually took out of the 30,000 square feet, they took almost 17,000 square feet of the building. So this is what their finished space looks like now.
There's the Belvedere in through the window on the
Yeah.
ground.
This is the residential. There's two residential units, one on the 3rd floor and one on the 4th floor. And this is what the residential, actually, this is the 2nd floor, which is a studio. But this is what the finished spaces on the east side of the building look like. These are not the offices now. This is the east side, which is facing kind of like the pond and up Ferry Street towards October Company. And this is the finished look of the top floor penthouse of that east side.
That's the last picture here.
Okay, yeah. So here, our website is, again, 98% done. Again, we can't really put in, what we're doing yet because we're not sure whether, the quantity of apartments versus condominiums, or if they're going to be all apartments, until we fully understand, that the 121A is enacted. But this is the website will continue right through. You can kind of scroll through this. This is obviously was our team. We had Rob Levesque to the left, who's our civil engineer, Kevin O'Reilly, who's our environmental engineer, myself, Siegfried Porth, and Mark Sullivan from DA Sullivan for the project. And then there's Lenny and his team. And we don't have Lee in here, unfortunately, but we got to get him in here. So this is an actual photo from Building 3 looking out over the pond regarding the neighborhood and the neighborhood concept that we're going to create by this project, making the connection to the rest of the Mill District corridor and New City.
So these are pages highlighting each of the buildings in what we're looking forward. And with Building 3, obviously, it's open now.
Building 5, which is the next building, which obviously we're hoping to start in the spring, will ultimately have 43 units. I think we originally had less than that in our application. We may have changed it. I think, Jeff, I think you had 24 units, but it's actually going to be 43 units. There will be a fitness facility, covered parking, a pet washing station, and a car detailing center. Seven Ferry will obviously, it's going to be mixed use. That's going to be potentially 84 residences with micro retail. There'll be a 24/7 concierge. Be very similar to a hotel lobby. And then Building 7 is going to have hopefully a restaurant and a full service bar restaurant on the roof of the building, overlooking the pond and the mountain range. Nine Ferry is actually the hydroelectric plant that's there now that would eventually have a TIF set in it. And that would be retail location. We do plan to resurrect the old existing hydroelectric turbine. We'll put a smaller updated hydroelectric turbine that will offset some of our common area electric on the project. Ferry and 15 Ferry will be a combination of mixed use. And again, all of these buildings are poised to have solar on the roofs, and I have to congratulate the council for passing the PACE program. That's going to be a game changer for a lot of businesses in Easthampton. So again, thank you very much for doing that. I've been watching that program since 2016. Fifteen Ferry is the last building.
And the last thing we have is a video, which I will play for you now. And you should get the sound directly from the video and not out loud. So if you're not hearing it right, please let me know and I'll reset it, but it should be good to go.
That's great. No, thank you. And then also, I definitely have to again thank Lenny and Lee for putting that together. That was hopefully that was helpful to you folks to see kind of what's been going on.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions?
Councilor Rothschild?
It's not a question. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. That was really exciting to see. And I know it's hard to present something so lively. If you had seen us in person, you would have probably seen all our facial expressions lighting up. And so since I know it's hard to present in Zoom with the same emotion, I just wanted to tell you that I really appreciated it. And I'm very excited about the project.
Well, I was looking at your facial expression, so I'm very appreciative of that. So it's nice.
Okay, Councilor Kwasinski.
Michael and your team, thank you very much for the clarity of your presentation. What was a very complicated topic, I think, was easily explained, and also the beauty of the project and for your perseverance. It clearly, in I think all of our opinions, is a blighted site that you've done wonders with already, and I know you're going to do even greater things. So thank you so much. We'll do our part.
Thanks, JP. Councilor Derby. Sorry, Councilor Zaret.
Thank you for that presentation. And yes, Mr. Bishna, I think I have probably some questions in the future, exactly how PACE will work specifically with the 121A, but I don't have to ask them tonight. I just wanted to thank you for the clarity of the presentation as well as the materials available in the packet. And I mean, I don't think I realized until tonight really how transformative this project, if it fully comes to fruition, is going to be for the city. So thank you for your vision.
Thank you. Thank you for your assistance.
Wonderful. Councilor Rist.
If it please the president, I'll make some motions.
It does.
Just so I say the right thing. I move first to send these to the two committees. I move that the request for...
Dan, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mayor, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, apologies for being a little slow on the draw here. I do want to, as we went through this, and you'll see in the 121A and the 6A agreements as proposed, as well as the Mass Works application that you looked at so long ago, that we're also talking within these complexes after much work with Mr. Michon and his team, as well as the state around workforce initiative housing, and exactly where that fits into this project is very much about the timeline of the work we're doing now. That the spaces you're looking at, we are working very hard with Mr. Michon and Mass Housing to make them open to as many possible current residents who would want to transition to something like this campus, and as well as other options for maybe even condominiums. But I know that was a concern of this council when we were talking on and off over the last couple of years, and I didn't want that to get lost in the initial impression. But there is, at the Finance Committee, there will be a more detailed conversation about what you saw tonight, the transmittal I put forward to you, and workforce initiative housing, affordable housing, and connection to passing or favorably looking upon the agreements I've transmitted to you. So then Mr. Michon can go back to the state and get the best possible finance and incentives from the state to provide us with a wide array of housing. So thank you, Madam President, for letting me jump in.
No problem. Jeff.
I just wanted I appreciate one more minute, which is I want to thank Mr. Michon and his team. I also want to thank the mayor, because this has been a really incredible project to be part of and watch evolve. And I really appreciate the presentation, because it's something where your head goes down and you're working every day. You don't often get to see sort of it presented in this way. And so I really appreciate it, Mike and your team. I think it's really outstanding. And I started this job in February of 2018, and literally, I think the very first day I walked in, we started talking about this idea and this project with you, and it's just really been a pleasure to kind of be part of. Even though it's been a little bit of my life every single day to get the road project to line up and work smoothly, so it's compatible with the work that you're doing. I just take this rare opportunity to thank you for bringing the project forward, and the public-private partnership that we have going has been really impressive, and it's really part of the equation. And I think it's just kind of continuing on with this discussion as we evolve in the next couple of months here. But I just wanted to say thanks, because it was really cool to see that. It's not something I get to see every day from that perspective.
Thank you. And I thank you very much, Mayor and Jeff and the city, because everybody's been very supportive of this project, and that's what it takes to make this happen, is your support and your being in the trenches with us to make it happen for the city.
Okay.
Right. Councilor Riss, back to you in a motion.
Okay, just to comment on process, I'm meeting with the Finance Committee next week, and we'll discuss at length a date that might work. And in the meantime, I might be in contact with Jeff so that he can let us know when Mike is available. We usually meet on a Wednesday between meetings, so I'll try to email you that kind of information before we set that date, because I want this to be the single topic on the agenda whenever that date is. So I'll make a motion to send both to the Finance Committee of the City Council and to the Planning Board of the City the approval of, or the discussion of approval of a project under Mass General Law, Chapter 121A, for the 1 Ferry Street project and 1 industrial lofts.
Second.
Motion and a second to send the information on 1 industrial lofts for the request for a 121A negotiated tax alternative tax to both the Planning Board and the City Council Finance Committee. Any discussion? All right, Barbara?
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild.
Aye.
Owen Zarrett.
Yes.
Craig Coniff.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Erica Flood.
Aye.
Omer Gomez.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
I have to make another motion to continue this public hearing to the first meeting in January, and I don't have that date, but I think that's the earliest I think we can set this. Jeff, does that make sense to you, that first meeting in January, to continue this to then? And if we're not ready, we can continue it again, but it sounded like I had to get this done by February, right?
Yeah, I think the only other alternative would be to continue it to December 16th, which would that would be the earliest, and then it could potentially go from there. But I don't know if that works with the rest of the council's schedule.
I believe the first meeting in January is January 6th.
We can change that. We can just continue that. I can do December 16th.
Okay.
Owen?
A really quick point of order. Do we need to seek any comments from the public before we exit this hearing?
That's a good point. It wasn't
anyone
really.
from the public? Does anyone from the public have any comments on this?
I didn't think I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
That's a good point, Counselor. So I'll make a motion to continue this public hearing to December 16th.
Second.
Motion second to continue the public hearing for 1 industrial lofts. Any further discussion?
If we're not done, we'll just continue that meeting.
Okay. Barbara?
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild.
Aye.
Owen Zarrett.
Yes.
Craig Coniff.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Erica Flood.
Aye.
Omer Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Public hearing is continued.
I'll make a motion to, oh, Jeff has something.
Hang on 1 second. Mr. Zarvis.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to check with you, Jesse. Are we going to need to motion to close our public hearing on this and then adjourn? Is that what you're looking for?
I think we should probably continue this because we opened a public hearing too. And that way we can continue it to the 17th, assuming that still works for planning board members.
Jeff, before I make that motion, do you need something?
No, this is good. This is what I was just going to ask about. I think just in terms of the public process and keeping it open, yeah, I think what Chair Beltrami said was to have the planning board continue their portion of this public hearing to November 17th, and then we'll have the planning board convene then. For anyone who's interested in following along, that would be the next meeting that the planning board would discuss.
Is that the only item on our agenda that day, on the 17th?
Yeah. Yep.
So it's a 6 p.m.?
Correct.
Do you guys want to make sure that Mike and his team can make that meeting?
Yeah, I'm good for it. I think, Jane, you okay?
The 16th, November?
17th.
17th? Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, great.
In that case, I motion to continue the planning board's public hearing for 1 Ferry Street seeking a MGL Chapter 121A to November 17th at 6 o'clock.
Second.
Oh. All right, voting to continue to November 17th. Brenda?
Aye.
James?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Thank you, planning
Need a
board
motion to adjourn now?
Yes, please.
Motion to adjourn the planning board.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. Brenda?
Aye.
James?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you, planning board. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
I was going to.
If I may, Madam President?
Please, hold on, everyone. Can we calm down? Mayor, I saw your hand up earlier. Did you have a comment?
No, actually, Chairman Beltrami answered it. Yes, I'm fine. Good. Sorry.
Councilor Kwasinski.
I just wanted to reach out to the planning board and say thank you. This is the first time I ever recall the full planning board and the full city council meeting together, certainly on Zoom, but certainly I believe in the history of this city. So thank you for the joint meeting and for the important purpose for which we met.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.
Thank you all.
Councilor Rist.
Move the public hearings be closed.
Second.
Motion second to close the public hearings. Any further conversation? Barbara.
Ann Rist.
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild. Aye. Owen Zaret.
Yes.
Craig Coniff.
Aye.
Salem Derby.
Aye.
Erica Flood.
Aye.
Omer Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
I think Barbara is starting to fade. I'm sensing not a lilt in her voice anymore. She's getting a little tired. Councilor Zaret.
Madam President, may I request a 5-minute recess?
We will take a 5-minute recess. Please be back at 8:51. Thank you. Pat, Pat, Pat. Waiting for Tom, JP, Salem, and Barbara.
I'm here.
Ah, there you are. Salem's back. You were back, right, Salem?
Yeah, but I'm eating.
Yeah. Well, that's fine.
And he's reverse aged as well.
Apparently.
Hey, come on.
Tom Peak, are you back yet? JP, are you back yet? Tom's back. JP is back. Okay. Meeting is now back, called to order. All right. So where we left off was, I believe, we are now going into the business of the committees. Finance, Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Madam President. We met this past Monday and we approved a $722,000 appropriation. We already approved this evening. As you all received from me, you received the salary and stipend recommendation and the EV charger ordinance that needed to be advertised. They will be up for public hearing for the next meeting. So I sent a finance report and those particular ordinances for Barbara to advertise. And I'm just saying that they will be up for public hearing next meeting. I have one item for new business. Madam President.
I think you have two, Dan. It was amended right before this meeting started with the tax class.
Oh, the tax classification. Okay. I move that the tax classification hearing be sent, tax classification discussion be sent to the Finance Committee for review.
Second.
Motion second to send the tax classification to the Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Lindsay Rothschild.
Yep. Yes.
Owen Zarrett.
Yes.
Peg Coniff.
Aye.
Elam Derby.
Aye.
Erica Flood.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Tom Peak. Dan Rist.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'm not sure, but I think I need to set up that tax classification hearing. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if Val is on this. I need to know if that has to be scheduled in November.
I think we already scheduled it, Dan.
No, you didn't. You just got it.
I know.
We have to schedule the public hearing.
Okay.
And Val, is she still on this meeting?
Yes.
Can this be scheduled in December? Because we already have a lot of stuff on the 18th, or do you need it right away?
No, we actually want the revolving account to pass first.
Okay.
Well, we can do that in that order. But is December okay for this tax classification hearing?
I believe so. They have to have the tax bills out by December 30th in order to be able to collect interest, et cetera. So, and then we have to get it through DOR once you have the hearing and it gets voted. So we don't want to make it too late.
I'm going to make it December 2nd, if that's all right, Val.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to set the tax classification hearing, public hearing for December 2nd at 6:15.
Second.
Motion second to set the public hearing for the tax classification 12-2. Any further conversation? Barbara?
Owen Zaret?
Yes.
Craig Coniff?
Yes.
Salem Derby?
Aye.
Erica Flood?
Aye.
Omar Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Tom Peak?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild?
Hi.
Motion passes.
I'll make a second new business item. First reading for a supplemental appropriation. The amount requested is $135,000 to be transferred from free cash to be transferred to the fire department overtime account, $135,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose. These funds will be used to cover contractual overtime for shift staffing through June 30th, 2021. I move that this be sent to the Finance Committee for review.
Second.
Motion second to send the fire department overtime appropriation to the Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Craig Coniff?
Yes.
Salem Derby?
Aye.
Erica Flood?
Aye.
Omar Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Yes.
Tom Peak?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild?
Hi.
Owen Zaret?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I further move to set a public hearing for the aforementioned $135,000 appropriation for December 2nd at 6:15.
Second.
Motion second to set a public hearing for the fire department overtime appropriation. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Salem Derby?
Oh, I hit the wrong one. Aye.
Erica Flood?
Aye.
Omar Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Tom Peak?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild?
Hi.
Owen Zaret?
Yes.
Craig Coniff?
Yes. Motion passes.
Madam President,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to conclude with that we're going to have our meeting next Wednesday at 5 p.m. I'll let you set the Zoom for that. It will be on the overtime account and the tax classification. I'll try to get the assessors to our meeting. That's 5 o'clock next week, the 11th. Thank you. That concludes.
Thank you. Councilor Gomez, Public Safety.
No report this time, Madam President.
Excellent. Appointments, Councilor Kwasinski.
Madam President, the Appointments Committee met and considered one application for the position of Easthampton Cultural Council. The individual is Christopher St. Martin. He was present for the meeting. We asked him questions. He seemed very well knowledgeable about Easthampton, had grown up here and moved away at age 18, and then returned to the community just in the last year, purchased a home, settled down, and also is an attorney in Springfield. He is very knowledgeable of our growth, what we've done in the city. He would have loved this meeting had he participated in the presentation. So he had also talked about ideas that he had for the Cultural Council. He had attended meetings of the council and knows one individual who had on the council who had suggested and recommended him. During the COVID, we did have a chance to talk about the COVID and other opportunities that the Cultural Council may be doing with Zoom and other forms of getting the community together. We discussed possible lecture series. We discussed possible Sing Fest, all sorts of possible fun opportunities for our community. So he was recommended by 2-0 by the Appointments Committee. If it would be appropriate to make the motion,
Please.
I would do so. I move to appoint Christopher St. Martin to the Easthampton Cultural Council through October 21, 2022.
Second.
Motion second to appoint Christopher St. Martin to the Easthampton Cultural Council. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zarrett,
Yes.
Peg Coniff,
Yes.
Salem Derby.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Madam President, typically our committee meets at 5 o'clock on the meeting date for the Wednesday of the full city council. That would be November 18th. If it's agreeable with the new members of the committee, we could do so at that time. Just thumbs up or thumbs down, or we could decide at another time. So we would like to make the next meeting November 18th at 5 p.m. This concludes.
And would that be to set the chair and clerk positions? Because I don't think there's any additional appointments, right?
That would be to set the chair and clerk positions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Madam President. Since we had a lengthy report out on one of our issues, I think the only thing to do is to clean up, make sure that we have the right date on that particular issue in highway business cannabis. So I'd like to ask for a 30-day motion, a 30-day extension in the form of a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Motion second to extend cannabis establishments in highway business zone 30 days. Any discussion? Barbara?
Peg Coniff, no, yeah.
That's fine. Yes.
Peg Coniff,
Yes.
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Yes.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Yes.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Yes.
Owen Zarrett.
Yes.
And I just want to remind everybody that we do have a meeting coming up on Wednesday, the 11th at 6 p.m. And we are hoping to get some progress on the highway business amendments and also tackle some of the new business that's on our agenda as well. And thus concludes.
Thank you, Councilor Derby. Property, Councilor Zarrett.
Thank you, President Coniff. Actually, I have a quick question of process that I usually rely on Councilor Rist to tell me. So we still have to approve minutes from prior meetings, and we have lost a member who was involved, Councilor Rothschild has been moved. So I'm assuming that we would have to convene a meeting with Councilor Rothschild to approve those minutes.
Won't you have two members, a quorum?
Yes, I'm just asking. Would
Yeah,
she have to be involved in?
We're there.
Okay, that was my question. Welcome, Councilor Flood. I think that since we do have a new member, I would open up the committee to a reorganization discussion. I'll set a meeting, and just briefly we'll have to discuss this agenda item, which seems to be not moving anywhere currently, but at this time, just for housekeeping, I'd like to request a 90-day extension to the dog park discussion.
Second.
Motion second to extend the dog park discussion 90 days on the agenda. Any discussion? Barbara?
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild,
Aye.
Owen Zarrett.
Before I vote, Councilor Rist had his hand up.
I'll vote.
Yes.
And Peg Coniff.
Aye. Motion passes.
This concludes.
Councilor Rist?
I just wanted to recommend, Counselor Zaret, that you consider removing this without prejudice. It's not going anywhere, and it can come back if the Recreation Commission ever gets to it. It's been 2 years. It's looking at the 18th, and I'm just recommending that you consider maybe making that discussion with Jeff and everybody, because it's not going anywhere until they meet, right? So
I agree. And so let's why don't I'll reach out to you. I just want to get some institutional insight on this. So yeah, it's something to consider. We'll convene and discuss it.
Okay. Rules and Government Relations, Councilor Peak.
Thank you, Madam President. Before we do anything else, I see 3 things that I'm going to need extensions on. 2 of them, and actually one that lapsed yesterday. So let's start with the 2 of them. I would request a 60-day extension for both the resolution proposal for a payment in lieu of taxes program and for the request for easthamptonma.gov emails for city committee chairs. Should I do that as 2 separate motions?
The one doesn't expire till January.
Oh, you're right. Okay. I thought, yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Long week. Okay. Well, I'll request a 60-day extension on the pilot program resolution.
All right.
Second.
Motion is second to extend the pilot agenda item 60 days. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Erica Flood?
Aye.
Wilmer Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Tom Peak?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild?
Aye.
Alan Zaret?
Yes.
Peg Coniff?
Yes.
Salem Derby?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. I also will need, I'm pretty confident we're going to wrap this up at our next meeting, but I would request a 30-day extension for the Ordinance Review Committee discussion as well.
Second.
Motion is second to extend the Ordinance Review Committee 30 days. Any further discussion? Barbara?
Wilmer Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Tom Peak?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Lindsay Rothschild?
Aye. Aye.
Zaret?
Aye.
Peg Coniff?
Aye.
Salem Derby?
Aye.
Erica Flood?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. And then finally, I just want to say, since our last non-special meeting, we did meet to discuss the Ordinance Review Committee. We settled on some general parameters in terms of membership, scope, timeline, that sort of thing. I'm going to have a fully fleshed out version of that, written out, ready at our next meeting, which will be Thursday, November the 12th at 6 p.m. I would encourage everyone to attend if you are interested in the subject. And I would certainly encourage any member of the public to attend as well. At that meeting, my hope is that we can take a vote on this and then bring it to the full council next time we all see each other. And thus concludes.
Thank you. Seeing that we have addressed all the new business and the old business, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilor Kwasinski.
Quick report from the senior.
Seconds from a clean getaway.
Yeah, no, seconds. I think we have a senior tax work-off committee meeting to announce for November 12, 2020. And you had a presentation before the municipal department heads, which you...
Yeah, I'll just give a brief on, I believe it was last Thursday or a month ago, I can't remember now, but I presented to all of the department heads the basic notion of what the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee is working on, what the program is, what other municipalities have done. It was well received. I got some emails afterward and some messages afterward from a couple of the department heads who are very interested in participating in this. So I have, if anyone's interested, I have the PowerPoint. I'd be happy to share it at some point. But we are continuing to move forward, and I hope that our committee will be able to put down some specifics around the amount of the tax write-off and some other details around it, which should be forthcoming in the next few weeks or a couple of months.
Thank you.
Thank you. I totally missed that on the agenda. All right, now I will take a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, there you go. You scared me, Councilor.
Second.
Second, motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor, Barbara?
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Andy Rothschild,
Aye.
Alan Zarrett,
Yes.
Craig Coniff,
Yes.
Salem Derby,
Aye.
Erica Flood,
Aye.
Homer Gomez.
Aye.
Thank you for the love, Councilor Derby. Have a good evening, everyone.
You're welcome.
Aye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, night, everybody.